Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for the nice words. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm thrilled to see so many people and so many faces. Welcome everyone. The human element in cybercrime and cybersecurity, I guess many of you now think, well, okay, that's something we know because we are the human people, right? You care about, about the human factor. But cybersecurity is not a user problem. Human behavior is not a security problem, and this is something that might be new to some of you. It's not, at least in the way you think, our behavior is a security problem. But let's start with a story. One of the media outlets I'm working for asked me to do a cybersecurity awareness training because of many phishing attacks on media companies recently. So we had to do video trainings, short assignments. We got test phishing emails, and this was they were very pushy with that. So it seemed to be really important to them, and they were permanently reminding us to do these trainings. There were deadlines for those videos and for tests, and we really felt the pressure. Me and my colleagues. The Guardian was hit by a ransomware attack a few months ago. The NZZ, the biggest newspaper in Switzerland, was attacked a few weeks ago. On a daily basis, newspapers in Germany are attacked by ransomware gangs. And after this training, I really felt like, wow, if this company will be encrypted, I could be responsible for that. During that time, it was a stressful time. I had to write many articles, and I was working on a deadline, on a tight deadline. And then they called for a meeting. It was a huge meeting on Microsoft Teams. One of those video meetings where a few people are talking and many people are listening. And since I was stressed and had to work, I thought, well, nobody will find out if I don't go there because it was such a big thing. But the very next day, I received an email, and it said, "Dear Eva, we missed you at our meeting last week. Please look at the following document urgently by the end of the week." Now I was stressed because I felt I was new at this company. I didn't work for them for so long. They are now really angry. I have to open this document and give the feedback right now, and clicked on the email. And then a window popped up and said, "This could have been a phishing email." So this was one of the test phishing emails. So I fell for phishing, and I felt really bad. And the first thing I thought was, oh, I can't tell anybody. I mean, I've just published a book on cybersecurity. I'm a cybersecurity journalist. How can that happen? How can I fall for a phishing email? But then I had some time to think, and now I realized I have to tell everybody. I think it's even my responsibility to tell everyone that this happened to me, because cybersecurity industry is getting something wrong. While I was working on my book, nearly everyone told me the people are the problem. The human factor is the problem. People are stupid, they fall for social engineering, they are naive, they are lazy, they're using the same passwords for everything, although we are telling them this for the last, I think, 10 or 20 years that they shouldn't do this, and they still do it. So we really have to train them, and then we will be fine. And these awareness trainings are a $1 million industry. There are tons of those companies offering that. Everyone is booking them. Cybersecurity insurances are asking for them, so sometimes they don't even insure a company if they don't make their employees doing these trainings. And these companies think, yeah, of course, then we are safe. If we tell our employees how to do it properly, we will be safe. But that's not true. And it's not even not true. This way of thinking is even dangerous. In order to understand that, I would like to start on the other side, by the attackers, because I believe that if we want to defend us properly, we need to understand our enemies. So who is it? Who is attacking us? And I met many people during the research for my book. And in the end, it's three types of people. It's criminals who go for the mass. It's criminals who carry out quite sophisticated, tailored cyber attacks. And then there are state hackers. So I read people like him. This is Sergei Pavlovich. This is one of the first type, criminals who go for the mass, or he was one of those. I met him in Moscow. He was in jail in Belarus for 10 years because he committed identity theft, stole credit card data in a huge dimension with a whole gang of people. And he's still wanted by the FBI. Still today, he's not able to travel because the FBI doesn't accept his jail, time in jail here in Belarus. He has this baseball bat, and that might look strange to you. This is a present he got when I was there in Moscow, because he now is running a YouTube channel, and it was the 2nd anniversary of his YouTube channel. And this was one of the presents he got. People like him, these criminals who go for the mass, they have a very good sense for our weaknesses. They find every vulnerability. And maybe most important, they are smart and they have time and energy to prepare well. Often they are poor. This is what I heard from him too. And they think it's their right to steal our money. Sergei Pavlovich even told me it felt like a patriotic act. And I think this is the fact until today, that Russia kind of tells its criminals it's good for our nation if you attack Western people. This picture with the baseball bat is symbolic for his change. This is at least what he told me, because he said, I'm a good guy now, because after he came out of jail, he decided not to be a criminal anymore. He's now making a living with this YouTube channel. So he's running a channel where he's interviewing other cyber criminals and sometimes security researchers, and he's living from this advertisement money. And when I talked to him in his studio in Moscow, and this is the studio where he's recording for his YouTube channel too, he told me about his childhood in Russia, in Belarus, and I realized that he is doing social engineering forever. He's doing that long before there was a word for that, at least a word everyone knows, like today. So for example, he told me as a small boy, he realized that he can sell things to people and telling them this would be something else. So for example, he sold sewing machines and said they are made out of Hitler gold. And people believed that, and whatever that should be, but people believed that and paid him much more money than he had paid for those machines before. And he asked me, well, if the people are happy with what they get, is this a problem? It's just a lie, but this is how he started to make money. And then, of course, he realized that this scales much better if you do it with cybercrime. And now you might think, well, if people buy these machines and believe these stupid lies, maybe they are naive. And I think everyone has a friend who has fallen for kind of cheap phishing attacks, who just clicked on an email that was not that sophisticated, or what you would say, in hindsight, you would say, well, how stupid, why didn't you check it before? But this cheap phishing, if it's cheap or if you're naive, that depends on the situation. And if you watch the situation closely, it's maybe not that naive anymore. So let's look at one example where I realized this connection. This is, on the slide, there's a bank account statement of a victim of the so-called Europol calls. So in Europe, there was a huge social engineering campaign last year where scammers called people and told them they were from Europol, and they somehow made those people to give them all their money, and this was just one. So she had several bank accounts, this was just one account, and I think what you can see on the slides that she sent money, sums that are mostly the same, and these are the sums that go through easily, right, where the bank doesn't check properly. This was TransferWise, or it's not called Wise. So she sent all her money to the criminals. And I heard of this campaign quite some time, and I was always wondering, so how does it work? Because all my friends or people in my bubble or people who are talking about it, of course, they just hung up. And when someone is calling you and telling you I'm from Europol, they just hung up. And I was wondering, how do they make it that they convince people to transfer all their money? And luckily, one day they called me. And I couldn't wait to hear their story. So he said, there was a man said, so this is Europol officer James Martin. My badge number is 20539. And now listen closely, and maybe you want to sit down. And he was really strict. And I realized quite quick that they are psychologically trained. So he told me a story. They found a car close to Berlin. It was totally damaged. Nobody was in there, but there was blood in there, and there were drugs in there. And this was rented on my name. And then they found that my bank accounts were used for money laundering. And now they would have to arrest me and block my bank and block my passport, and I will not be able to do anything anymore. And so I played the game, and I said, oh no, what happened? I'm sorry, I don't know anything. Please believe me, that wasn't me. And so I finally could convince him, and he believed me and said, okay, I guess then you must be a victim. Let me help you. And then they played this good cop, bad cop game. So James Martin was always a strict person, reminding me I have to cooperate, I have to do everything he is telling me, otherwise I will end up in jail. And then there was a nice lady, she was saying, oh, I'm so sorry, please sit down, go get a glass of water, we will help you. And with that game, they tried to convince me to send them all my money, because the story was, they have to save this money because now it's on this bank account where criminals have access to it. And in addition, my bank too wants to get the money, and then I won't have it anymore. So I had all other people were enemies. Only those Europol people were my friends. They tried to let me download TeamViewer so that they could help me with these complex topics of transferring money. And I always made up some problems, like, oh, I cannot download TeamViewer, I need an admin password. And they said, oh, isn't that a private computer? Oh, probably your husband has this password, because this is always like it is, right? But they had told me I'm not allowed to speak to anybody, because you never know who did this, who stole my identity. So I told them, so how can I ask my husband? I'm not supposed to speak to him about you. And then they said, well, maybe you can tell him that the kids made something with the computer and it doesn't work anymore. And so we discussed some possible solutions, but I told them, oh, I made some kindergarten kids up. They are in kindergarten, so I cannot, my husband knows that, I cannot tell this. So it went on and on for about 1 hour. They really tried. And they were really creative and really nice stories. I was really impressed. And only in the end they gave up, because they realized that it won't happen. And then they threatened me and said, we will come and get you, and we are already in front of your door. So they really tried to scare you. So I didn't fall for that, because of course I knew that this was existing and I was already waiting for this call. But I met two victims. One of these lost gave me her bank account statements, because these are, of course, the names of attackers, or of the money mules who transfer the money to the attackers. So why do they fall for it? One of them was is teaching at the university. So they are not stupid, they are not naive. She is working in a critical. She's doing research in a critical field, and she said, "Well, I was waiting that someone would steal my identity. She was just ready for it. And when they called, she was in another country. She was traveling. She was on her own. She wanted to go back, so she knew she needed her passport, and everything made sense to her. And she was frightened that she wouldn't be able to travel home again." And the other person was a student. She was new in Germany, and her visa was about to expire. And she said, "I was just frightened when they now come and get me, I will be kicked out of the countries, and my studies are in Germany." So both of them were just, for them, it sounded legit. A bit like the email in the beginning I told you, it sounded legit to me, although it wasn't tailor-made for me. This email was just a mass email that's sent to everyone, and I just, by coincidence, had missed a meeting in reality. So this is the reason why we fall for those things, because it seems to fit. And many other of these phishing emails don't fit, and we think, haha, how stupid are they? But yeah, there are always people who have a situation where it fits. But let's go back to Sergei Pavlovich. In his office, I saw another reason for why we fall for cybercrime. This is specialization. So this is someone he was interviewing for his YouTube channel, and he's wearing a mask because he's wanted by the police. And Sergey told me, these videos where people have to wear a mask, they are the most successful because, of course, they are professional criminals and people can learn a lot from them because the people watching his YouTube channel want to learn all these things. So he was interviewing this money laundering specialist, asked him which banks he can recommend. They are not that skeptical if you come and want to make a fake account, or most of the times they send people to the bank, real people with real passports, because it's not that easy to open a bank account with a fake passport. And they find those people in front of homeless shelters, for example, or in front of drug rehab clinics. So they know how to find the weakest link or the weakest people and people who need money. And then they convince them to make a bank account. And people like him, they are kind of the managers of these so-called money mules. So they have to make sure that they don't steal the money, that they don't just keep it on their account. So Sergey was asking him, how do you do that? How do you make sure that they don't take your money? And he said, well, I just take their SIM card and they don't have access to their own bank account. Others, this is what I heard from security researchers, are hacking their own money mules or surveying them just to make sure that they find out if they do something wrong or if they maybe are caught by the police because they are there with their real names. And the police is coming, they want to hear what they are telling them. Yeah, and when I watched the video later on YouTube, I saw many comments. So those people who were watching those videos were discussing all these things and obviously planning their own cybercrimes. So these are the criminals for the mass. And then there are the criminals with tailored attacks, mostly these typical ransomware groups where we hear quite often from them. And I could not meet them because they are not that keen on meeting up with journalists. But I could meet an investigator recently. On the left side, this is Daniel Lorch. This is just a small police office in southern Germany. But they had a huge success in January chasing a ransomware group called Hive, which is a really dangerous and big group. And I was curious to see what kind of people are able to do this in a small police office in southern Germany. And Daniel Lorch told me exactly this, that these specialists for every part of the process in cybercrime are really challenging for them because, of course, they are good in what they are doing and they are well prepared. So they, for example, those people who send phishing emails, they are called initial access brokers. That means they do sell access to computers or to networks to the criminals who then, for example, specialists for banking Trojans who develop viruses. Then the next step is money laundering specialists and so on. So there are specialists for every part of the process. I once observed the communication between criminals because I was researching about a huge banking fraud operation with German banks, and I saw how the manager of this banking fraud operation tried or bought fake websites. And there are specialists for German bank websites on the darknet, and they even make apps for two-factor authentication. So people, bank customers, then download an app and think this is legit from their bank, and in reality, they give the criminals access to their two-factor authentication. So Daniel Lorch told me it's really hard to chase them. In addition, they have a lot of money, of course, because still many companies pay if they are encrypted, so the effort is worthwhile. And there are groups, dedicated groups to social engineering. He said one of them is called SOC Gaulish. And you can see on the slide behind Daniel Lorch and his colleague that they have drawn a network connections between those specialists to try to find out how to catch them. And they finally made it. They read the whole communication for half a year, so they found a lot about these people. And I think this only happened because they really, really believed that they could do this, and this is maybe another important human factor they don't observe that often when it comes to authorities, that they really, really believe they want to do it. And Daniel Lorch himself is really angry, and I think this is another motivational factor for him, because he's working in this small office, and he's meeting these people manager from small family companies in person. He said sometimes they sit in front of me and they are crying and say, well, we are encrypted and this is the end. Please help me to save my company. So he's really angry about ransomware groups. Yeah, and then, and this is how it started for me. They put this sign on all the dark websites from this group called Hive. This hidden site has been seized. Now you can see all this sign on all the websites, and you see Polizei Baden-Württemberg among Department of Justice and the FBI and everyone. So they were really proud that they could do this. Yeah, and then the third group you have who are attacking us are state-sponsored actors, state hackers, and of course I couldn't meet them either. But I could see some of their traces, and this is a bit complicated, this slide. I just wanted to show you one example of a really sophisticated phishing email I saw in Ukraine when I did some research there. So it seems to be coming from Ukrenergo, which is an energy company in Ukraine, which was already hit by an attack, by a cyber attack by Russian state hackers. And for the next attack, they pretended to send emails from them. And it says it's about the procedure for the preparation of the development plan of the integrated energy system of Ukraine for the next 10 years. And the email says the draft development plan is attached to the email. So it sounds like really an official email. And I saw similar emails for German energy companies during the war, before the war. So during my research, I found quite some traces from Russian-sponsored state hackers who try to intrude in different companies, especially into critical infrastructures. Maybe just to spy, and in Ukraine, of course, we saw many examples where they didn't only spy, in the end they really attacked them. And I analyzed some of these actions Russian state hackers had done in the past, and others too, for my book. So there's not a huge difference to the US. I think everybody knows that the NSA has some of the best hackers of the world, and we saw this in the Snowden leaks. So they have really, really powerful cyber weapons. And I would like to show you one example where we saw what happens if those cyber weapons are even combined. So the NSA lost one of their weapons. It's still not clear how it happened. Maybe it was stolen from them. It was after some time, 2017, it was just published in the dark web. And then there was an attack, again, meant to hit Ukraine mostly, made by Russian state actors. And this is the company on the slide you see, a big container ship by Maersk. Maersk is one of the companies that nearly went bankrupt because of this attack, because they combined these two kind of cyber weapons. One was a Windows vulnerability the NSA had took or didn't report to Microsoft because they wanted to use it. Because they combined these cyber weapons and the Russian intelligence, this was a worm that was so fast, propagating so quickly around the whole world. So many international companies were hit too, because they were doing business with Ukraine. And so this is how it happened that they were attacked too. And for Maersk, there's this really interesting story. So it took minutes for them that the whole company worldwide was encrypted, just everything. They couldn't even contact each other anymore because they didn't see their address book and telephones and things like that. And then these huge container ships were jamming in the harbors, and on the other side there were these trucks waiting because they needed to take the containers, but everything was digitally and nobody could access all these documents. And I think for 2 or 3 weeks this really was some chaos, and nobody didn't know what to do. And when they finally wanted to restart their business, they met somewhere they found some backup files finally. But when they tried to start again, they realized, oh, wow, there's no domain controller because all the domain controllers were connected to each other. So they had about 150 copies of them, but all of them were encrypted too. And only then a small remote office in Ghana called them and said, well, during the attack we had internet outage. So we have one of those domain controllers left. So they had to fly to Ghana and pick it up. And this is just why Maersk is still alive. And it's one of the biggest logistic companies in the world. Every third banana, I learned, is transported by Maersk. And I talked to their security, the boss of security, chief information officer, and he said, well, I'm really a happy guy because when I tell them we need this and that for security, they just give me the money. So after that, it's a great job there. Before that, I think it was hard. And the damage of this attack, it's called NotPetya, is $10 billion, so it's really, really expensive. And yeah, as I told you, really sophisticated. I talked to Ukrainian cybersecurity researchers, and they described that the attackers saved 10% of all the machines they encrypted. They put a special file on it, and the virus, when it arrived, checked if this file is there. And if it was there, then they didn't encrypt anything. And when he looked more closely to these computers, he found that they had a backdoor implemented in them. So they made sure that they don't encrypt everything, because if you encrypt everything, people just throw the things away or start from new. But if you leave a few machines for every company, then you are able maybe to go back in afterwards. So it's really sophisticated. So I think what we really learned from that is criminals as well as state hackers have an enormous amount of time and energy and money. They want to have our money, they want to have information from us, they want to sabotage. And for both counts, it's their job. But we have another job. So we cannot read every email twice because this is not our job. And this is something I learned from Angela Sasse. She's the chair of Human-Centered Security at the University of Bochum, and she's a Leopoldina member. Yeah, and she said exactly this. If we have to check every email extensively, we don't get any work done. And this sounds so easy, right? But I think this is the main thing people from the cybersecurity industry overlook. And this is what, if you tell people you have to do this awareness training and we send you test phishing emails, this is the first huge mistake they make, that they think that this is even possible. So Angela Sasse said they blame the employees, and the problem is when you learn it that way, you don't learn at all, because the only thing you learn if you click on a test phishing email is, well, I failed. Obviously, I'm not able to do this, and this is not how you learn. So she did a lot of research how people react to these things, and she saw, for example, employees who then just marked every email as suspicious. So this is what we could do too. If you're not sure if this is phishing or if it's legit, we can just send it to the IT department, and only 6 weeks later they answer. So it's sometimes not even, doesn't make sense to work that way. But yeah, but the reason for that is that if people learn that they fail in that, they just report every email just to be sure. And she said others just don't open emails anymore at all. And this is, of course, expensive too for the companies, because it could be a customer who has a question. And the reason for that is because the way our brain is structured. I learned from her and from others. And there are two kinds of thinking: slow thinking and fast thinking. And I think many of you know the book by Kahneman about thinking fast and slow. And emails are our routine work, Angela Sasse told me. So that means we do this in a fast thinking mode. And in this mode, there is no critical thinking. It's just we do it because we have to get it done. In addition, when we are frightened, like I was when I had this email that I missed the meeting, or when there are any emotions in place, then it's especially hard for our critical thinking to show up. So the sad story is all this phishing training won't help us, because it's not the way how we can solve this. And it's not only emails. There are penetration testers in the real world, physical penetration testers too. And of course, criminals try to access our buildings physically too. And there are really many stories how they tried and how they were successful, and then they just bring a thumb drive or something with them, with the malware. So then it's even easier to get our data or to get access to our networks. This is Jenny Radcliffe. I interviewed her for the book. She's from the UK. She's a physical engineering penetration tester. And he told me many, many stories, but one is here in Hamburg, and I think that fits very well to tell you. She was booked by a bank in Hamburg, and they book her just to make sure that they think they do everything, that nobody can access the building who is not allowed to. And then they book people like Jenny Radcliffe, physical social engineering pen tester, and they tell them, try to access our building. We think you won't be able to make it. And Jenny Radcliffe told me, well, she always made it. So this was a very elegant bank in Hamburg, she said. And she did some research. This is always how she starts, and said, well, Germans, I found out, they don't like if you curse. They don't, especially in an expensive bank, they want to be nice and quiet and polite and everything. So she had this as a plan in her head that this might help. Then she dressed up as a consultant, and she pretended that one of her arms was injured, so she had a bandage around one of her arms, and under the other arm she had many folders, like a consultant, and she's going to like do a workshop. So like this, she accessed then this fingerprint sensor in the entrance, and of course she knew that it wouldn't work because her fingerprint wasn't scanned at all. But anyway, she just tried to put her thumb on that fingerprint, and of course it was complicated, and the folders were about to fall down, and of course it made merp, so it didn't let her in. Then she started cursing that this stupid thing, it didn't work yesterday and it don't work today. And of course the security guy already was watching her. And then she tried again and again and again. It always did burp, burp, didn't let her in. And then of course the security guy had to go to her and find out what happened. And she started cursing and ranting. And then he said, well, you have to try the other thumb. And she said, no, it was not even scanned, such a stupid idea. But this guy was really stressed because she was so loud and making so much noise. So he just took her hand and put it on that sensor, and then she was screaming and yelling at him, "You are hurting me! This is too much!" So he was so stressed that he just opened the door with his fingerprint because he wanted her to go away and to be silent. And this is how she came in, and had, of course, her USB thumb drive with malware with her. And I have another story, but maybe I keep that for later because the time is running already. Remember the fence if you want to hear the story later. What's the story about a fence? And I met people like Ragnhild Sagen. She's a security researcher and physical penetration tester from Norway. And she changed her job recently, and I don't know for sure, but it may be because she didn't feel good about her previous job, because she told me, when you are being lured into a social engineering test, it's the same feeling as being scammed. And this is true. You feel deceived. You feel deceived by this person. So she's, as you can see, a really nice person when she wants to go. And she's just talking nicely to the people at the entrance, making friends with them, and pretending to be a colleague. And this is how she accessed many buildings. But yeah, people felt deceived not only by her, but by their company too, because they knew that the company had hired her to deceive her. And she was always speaking with the people afterwards, because she says, you don't learn anything if we don't talk about it afterwards and help you to process this. And she realized that most of the people really felt bad for weeks and months and were thinking about, what did I do wrong? And she felt bad because she knew she was just nice, and this is how it works, right? We fall for that because we are people and we want to be nice and polite to people. But some of the people who let her in were even fired after they let her in by the company. And she said, well, yeah, this is not how you learn, if you, not at all, right? With this, if they even fire you afterwards. Or if you have the fear to be fired, maybe you don't let any person in anymore. So IT security is ignoring neuroscience, it's ignoring how our brains works, and it's ignoring ergonomics, right? Angela Sasse told me how much money, they said they totally underestimate how much money they spend for security measures that don't work, that don't even work. And to find out what to do with that, I asked Christina Licati, who is a psychologist and a security researcher from Zurich. And she told me, as soon as there are emotion into the mix, so she says, once fear is into the mix, you forget about all your critical thinking capabilities. In psychology, we say your reptilian brain takes over. And this is what happened to me with this email, and what happened to the victims of the Europol calls. This reptilian brains is the same effect, like this thinking slow and thinking fast by Kahneman. The reptilian brain is the thinking fast mode of the brain that's stopping all critical thinking because it has to go fast. Because this fear tells us there is a problem, we have to act now, we have to leave the situation. And they say these attackers, they do three things. They put you under emotions. They say it's urgent, you have to do something now. And then there's a call to action. And this should be an easy pattern, right? When I talked to her, I thought, okay, when I just remember this, if I receive an email with these three things, I can just stop and think and check twice. But it's not that easy because our brain doesn't work that way, because critical thinking is so much in the background that you are not able to remember this in most of the cases. So with this email, I just clicked before I could think, because it had clearly these three things, right? Emotions, urgency, and a call to action. So seems like we are lost, right? There's no solution for that. But of course, there are solutions for everything, and I think you are the right people to think about those. One of the physical social engineering pentesters said, well, the solution is really technical measures. He suggested for the physical problem, for example, people slipping in with others at an entrance. This is what I did a lot, just to find out if it works. So we were told too in this other company, if you enter the building and someone is just slipping in with you, don't let this person slip in. This person should go to the security guy and show that she's allowed to go in, or ask for the person who is waiting for her from the company. So I tried this, and I just slipped in with people, and of course it works. And I felt a bit bad after I did it a few times, because I know that I'm causing trouble for these people, because they have learned that they are not allowed to do this. So what we can do is just a technical measure called, in German, and we have a word for everything, Personenvereinzelungsanlage. People singling systems, maybe in English. So it's like this. You have at airports or at metro stations. So these are doors that physically close after each single person. Is not possible to slip in with another person. And this is not nice. I think it doesn't look nice, and it's annoying. But these are the systems that take the responsibility from the employees. And this is the only fair and sustainable solution for this people slipping in with others problem. And we have similar things, so this could be a symbol for technical measures for emails too, right? When I talked to this investigator, Daniel Lorch, he said, so when he comes to one of these companies who have been encrypted, he says, okay, show me what happened, and they show them the emails and things, and he can be very strict too. He tells them, every second email shouldn't reach those people. So he said it's so easy to filter out many of those emails technically. Of course, not all of them. Of course, if they are sophisticated and tailored, you won't be able to filter them. But he said still there are so many emails that shouldn't come through. So that would reduce the workload massively if they would just use what's already possible. And I had a similar experience. I did kind of a pen testing with universities for a research around Christmas with an ethical hacker in Germany. And we saw that 1 out of 5 universities had totally weak security measures. So it was easy for us to get access to grades, to secret research, to a ton of emails, just via the technical way. So we didn't do any social engineering. We just checked how secure they are. So there's a lot of room for improvement. But of course, it's hard, especially when it comes to social engineering. We don't want to mistrust everyone. I think it's not a nice society if we make people just mistrust by default. But all solutions fell short so far. So I thought a bit, was inspired by some of the research I saw in your field. Maybe sensors could help us, wearables could help us with sensors if they sense that I'm emotional. Maybe they could alert me and tell me, I realize you are emotional. Maybe don't decide something important now. So they could maybe help us to come back to this critical thinking, or to stop. It's only a few seconds where we need to stop in these situations to realize that this might be an attack. Then there's behavioral biometrics, behavioral authentication. I saw many interesting topics, projects in your field. And I thought about that when I did research about this Europol call campaign, because you saw this bank statement. This was from Wise. And I was wondering, why do they let this happen? It should be so easy to realize. They need just an easy algorithm, right? To realize that this is not right, because it's 10 transfers to strangers. She never transferred money and things like that. So I asked Wise, but they didn't answer my emails. But then I asked PayPal, because I realized that PayPal has kind of measures that work properly. When I was in Ukraine, in Kiev, for the research for the book, my Visa card didn't work. Because for my bank, obviously, if I'm in Ukraine, it has to be fraud. But I was there, so it was no fraud, but I couldn't pay anything. So I had to use PayPal, and PayPal, of course, knew that I was in Kiev, because they collect all kinds of data, and this is what they told me when I asked them. They have so many data points about every single customer. They make a story. It's called story-based analytics. So they know already that I will be in Kiev and pay there, and that this is legit. And if they are not sure, then they have some different measures to like a second factor, like send an SMS and things like that. So this behavioral biometrics is really interesting too at the same time, and this was the other part of my story. It comes with problems for data protection, and I really hope that you take these things into account, and I know that there are solutions for that too, so privacy preserving, computing and things like that. But it's not totally easy. But as I said, you are the people who take care of people, and you have multi-disciplines who think about these things. So I really can't wait to see solutions for this coming from your field. And always remember, our nature is not a security problem. You are the people who can solve this, and I'm sure you're doing a great job. Thank you.